Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the NBA DFS Core Pick video live stream for January 27th, and I believe it's a 5-game main slate overall. Just doing a quick live stream today. Going to go over a recap of yesterday's picks, seeing how they turned out, talking about the injuries that are in play for tonight's slate, going over to my core picks for both DraftKings and FanDuel. I do expect some of my picks, at least early on today, to change throughout the day as we get more news with these injuries that could change the slate overall today. And then if we get a little bit of time, I'm going to look at some price picks. At least the early lines on price picks don't look the greatest at this point in time, but I can highlight a couple picks that I do like or would at least consider on tonight's slate overall. But without further ado, we're going to get into it with a recap of yesterday's picks. Don't have this one up on the screen there since I'm not logged into the Google for the StreamYard browser, but I do have it up over on my Firefox browser, so I do have it there. On DraftKings side, we had Chris Paul at point guard at $7,700. Looking for 39 points down. He got to 49 yesterday, so he was a really good hit. And then at shooting guard, we had Karis LeVert at $5,600. I was looking for 28 points down, got to 25.25. So technically, he was a miss yesterday. 32 minutes, mainly scored the ball. Game was a blowout, so he probably gets an extra couple minutes in a regular game, 35, 36 minutes. So we get 3 or 4 extra minutes out of him. Probably gets close to that 28 points that we were looking for out of him yesterday. And then at small forward, we had Cameron Johnson, who was $5,300, looking for 26, 27 points down. He got the 36.5 on the DraftKings side, so he was a really good hit yesterday as well. Then at power forward, we had Julius Randle at $9,900. Looking for 49, 50 points down, got to 52.75, so he was a good hit as well. And then last but not least, at that center position, we had Dwight Powell at $3,600, got to 27.5, so he was a really good hit as well. So pretty solid day overall on the DraftKings side. The one lone miss was Karis LeVert. If you had 3 other good players in there, you had an easy chance of cashing yesterday. And then we move over to the FanDuel side real quick, where we had point guard Trey Jones, $6,300. Obviously, we were looking for 31, 32 points out. He only got to 14.4, so he was probably the worst miss we had altogether yesterday. 27 minutes he only played. The game was a blowout, just not too effective overall, which is kind of sad to see, but you were kind of expecting him to take a step up without some of those other Spurs pieces out there yesterday. Then at shooting guard, we had Karis LeVert once again, $5,500 on the He was $5,500 on the FanDuel side, and we were looking for 27, 28 points out. Got 25.7. Once again, he played 32 minutes. That game was a blowout. Probably gets a couple extra minutes if that game is a little bit more competitive and gets to what we were looking for out of him yesterday, but not a bad miss altogether. Then at small forward, once again, we had Cameron Johnson at $5,400. Was looking for 27 points out. Got to 34.6 on the FanDuel side, so he was a really good hit over there as well. And then in the updated core, we had Keita Bates-Diop at power forward yesterday, $3,700, looking for 18, 19 points down. I believe he got the start last night. Got to 21.7 points, so he was a hit as well. Then at the center position, we had Alperen Sengun, who was $8,300, looking for 41, 42 points down. He got to 40.9, so I did give him a push yesterday. This is essentially 41 points. He got a couple quick fouls in the second half, probably lost a couple minutes there. Otherwise, he would have been a pretty good smash hit once again yesterday. And then Paul George, who we did have in the initial core, technically I took him out. I put Keita Bates-Diop in, but still would have been my 6th guy in yesterday. So he was $8,200, looking for 41.7, got to 62.3, so he was a hit as well. So I thought I'd just mention him since he was in the initial core as well. But with that being said, pretty good day on both sides. The worst part of the day was Trey Jones over on FanDuel, but if as long as you had some other decent along with the initial core or with the core that I did have there, you had a really good chance of cashing yesterday as well. But with that being said, we're going to get into these injuries and play for today's slate. It is a 5-game main slate. Once again, I do believe 5 games correct. So we are going to start off with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Indiana Pacers, who are the lone game tipping off at 7 o'clock Eastern time today. So on the Bucks side, we have Serge Ibaka and Bobby Portis out once again. AJ Green and Marshawn Beauchamp, both this is questionable, but both not really factors for DFS purposes, but could open up some minutes for other guys as well. And then Giannis is listed as probable today. Obviously, he's been dealing with some knee injuries, but he did return the last game, so don't have too many concerns for him overall. Technically, this projected starting lineup has Chris Middleton projected as starting. I believe he's came off the bench both games since he's returned. So look at him to have his minutes limit once again, maybe to come off the bench. And then Pat Connaughton kind of play the rest of the role with alongside him, or I guess in place of him when he's not out there on the court. Then on the Pacers side, we have Tyrese Haliburton and Daniel Theis both out once again, so no changes on that part. Andrew Nemhart still listed as questionable due to an illness. He's missed the past 2 games due to that illness. Pretty long time to have an illness, but hopefully he's feeling better. If he doesn't end up playing, TJ McConnell's going to look really good. Buddy Hield's going to look pretty good. Benedict Matherin's going to look pretty good as well. And then we have Aaron Neesmith dealing with a wrist injury. He's questionable as well. So there's going to be quite a few moving pieces potentially for this Pacers team. And then we have Miles Turner, who is questionable as well. I can't remember what his injury is off the top of my head, so I'm going to take a look at it here. He has an ankle injury, but he pretty much played the whole last game. So expecting it not to be too severe, but if he were to miss, obviously could open up some value on this Pacers team overall as well. Then we move over to the Grizzlies, who are without John Conchar, Danny Green, and Steven Adams all once again. And then Desmond Bane is listed as questionable. He is listed as having the knee soreness. So typically you see this on back-to-backs as kind of the excuse to rest guys. Well, they didn't play yesterday. They don't play tomorrow, so it's not a back-to-back case. So I think maybe this is a real injury or at least a real soreness issue. So maybe there's a chance that he doesn't play tonight. I probably give it 40% chance of him playing, 60% chance he misses. If he ends up missing, it's going to open up some value on this Memphis team. John Morant's going to look a little bit better. Dylan Brooks is going to look a little bit better. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to look a little bit better. And then you could open up some value in Zaire Williams, who's going to probably fall into a bunch of minutes. Him and Tyus Jones could get a couple extra minutes as well, because there is no John Conchar tonight as well. And then you got Brandon Clark and Xavier Tillman at center, who kind of pick your poison on any given night, but either one of them could have some pretty good upside as well. On the Timberwolves side, we have Jordan McLaughlin, Taurean Prince, and Karl Anthony Towns all out once again. Rudy Gobert is technically listed as questionable, but he's played the 2 most recent games, so not too concerned about him overall. He looks pretty good on DraftKings and more of a GPP play over on FanDuel. Just going to point out, this is a revenge game for Kyle Anderson, if you want to call it that, since he was most recently with the Memphis Grizzlies up until, I believe, last season. So could be a little bit of motivation factor there if you like chasing the whole revenge story narrative. Particularly, I am not someone that really chases that too often. Then for the Orlando Magic, we got Jonathan Isaac, who was ruled out earlier today, and then Chuma Okeke is out once again as well. So obviously, Jonathan Isaac did recently return from his long absence, over 2-year absence, due to a couple different injuries, and he's played about 8 to 10 minutes both games he's played, and obviously they're sending him out tonight due to rest or load management or whatever you want to call it, injury management. And then for the opposite side of that game, we got the Miami Heat, Nikolai Jovic, Duncan Robinson, Obar Yurtseven all out once again. Then we have Max Strus, Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith, all technically listed as game time decisions, but all listed as probable to play. So there's a good chance that all 3 of them end up playing tonight as well. So not like the greatest value on the Miami side. Obviously, you could take some shots, especially on DraftKings, where their prices are a little bit better. Then we move down to Cleveland Cavaliers. We got Dylan Windler listed out once again. This is a back-to-back situation, so we don't know full extent of their injury report, but Kevin Love, Donovan Mitchell, both assumed to be questionable for tonight's game as well. If Donovan Mitchell is to miss, once again, Darius Garland and Karis LeVert probably going to look pretty good once again. Evan Mobley might take an extra step up as well, since he's been playing pretty well overall. And then assuming that Ricky Rubio is not going to play on the back-to-back, obviously, since he just recently came back from his ACL surgery. Then on the opposite side, we had the Oklahoma City Thunder. Povashevsky's still out. Jerome Robinson-Earl's still out. Now Lou Dort joins them. So you can open up some minutes here for Oklahoma City. Whoever ends up starting for them is going to probably look pretty interesting, whether it's an Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, a Trey Mann, Jalen Williams with a Y, Mike Muscala, whoever ends up starting, assuming Kenrich Williams still ends up in that starting lineup as well. Could be a pretty interesting slate for them and could open up some value overall, but they did run an 11-man rotation last time out. So a lot of minutes kind of to go around and a lot of variability with those minutes as well. And last but not least, we get down to the Toronto Raptors and the Golden State Warriors. For the Raptors, it's just Delano Banton listed as questionable tonight. Doesn't make a major impact. And then for the Warriors, we got Andre Iguodala and Andrew Wiggins, both listed as questionable. Wiggins would be the bigger piece there. If he doesn't play, last time we saw Jonathan Kuminga get the start, but they could go back to a lineup where they do start Kevon Looney as well as Draymond Green kind of in their little front court. But that's kind of quick little rundown on all the injuries in play for tonight's slate. Once again, the main ones that we're probably going to be looking at, Andrew Wiggins, Donovan Mitchell, going to be a pretty whether he plays or not. And then we get to Desmond Bane. He's going to be another pretty good one. And then just that Pacers news overall. So pretty simple slate tonight in terms of injuries. I'll be listing all those injuries down in the comments throughout the day. So make sure you're checking that as we do get closer to lock, as well as my updated core, which will be out about 20, 30 minutes prior to lock as well. But with that being said, we're going to close out of the injuries for now. We're going to move over to DraftKings. We're going to talk some core picks. And like I mentioned earlier, these are core picks that could potentially change throughout the day. And probably a pretty good chance that they do, just because we have some news that is in limbo, even though it's not major news overall. So let me just scroll down on this page too, because it's not showing up the greatest. And in terms of the point guard on the DraftKings side, we have D'Angelo Russell, who is who is $6,700. You're looking for 33, 34 points at him, essentially what he's been averaging so far in the season. He's kind of found his shot once again, taking some extra shots, being a little bit more useful, playing a couple extra minutes once again. Currently, I'm projected for 35, 36 points tonight. Does have some pretty good upside if this game remains competitive as well. Then at shooting guard, we're going to move down to Buddy Hield, who's really been killing it as of late. Only $6,100. His price tag actually dropped down $100 since the last time he was on the slate. And we're only looking for 30, 31 points on him. He's averaging almost 32 on the season. Currently, I'm projected for 33 tonight. If Andrew Nembhard doesn't play once again, Buddy Hield's going to look pretty good. Benedict Mathurin, who is our next core pick, is also going to look pretty good. So Mathurin's put together back-to-back really good games, and he's $5,700, looking for 28, 29 points out. Currently, I'm projected for 29, 30. Small forward is not the greatest position overall tonight, so just kind of like plugging him in there. If we get some Pacers news that doesn't work out in his favor, maybe we move off him. If we get some Pacers news that opens up some pretty good value, works out in his favor, maybe we move off him, or maybe he just looks a little bit better overall on tonight's slate. Then at power forward, I really like Jackson. Yeah. Then at power forward, I really like Jaren Jackson Jr. tonight at $6,600. You're only looking for 33 points on him. He's averaging about 34 and a half so far in the season. Pretty good pace-up spot against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Not the greatest defensive team in the world as well. We might see a couple extra minutes of him at the 5 spot, that center position overall. Not necessarily that we have to do it tonight against, Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, guys like that, but there still is pretty good upside with him. I currently have him projected for about 35, 36 points tonight. Definitely has that high-end upside for more if he has a big block game, if he's very involved, and if Desmond Bane ends up sitting once again. And then last but not least, at that center position, a couple of guys that really stood out today, but I ended up ultimately on Jarrett Allen for the Cleveland Cavaliers, $6,000. Looking for 30 points down. He's averaging about 32 and a half on the season. Currently, I'm projected for 32, 33 tonight. If Kevin Love misses once again, we already saw a willingness to play him some more minutes. If he does that tonight against the Oklahoma City Thunder, if this game's competitive and he's playing 36 minutes, Jaren Allen's going to look like a smash play. And one of the last times we did have him in the core pick, it was $5,900. That was his over 50-point game. So do like him quite a bit once again. But with that being said, if you go with these 5 players that I do have listed here so far, you'll have $18,900 remaining, $6,300 per player. So at this point in time, looking a little bit more like a balanced build type of day. There's a couple guys at the top that you could consider, whether it's Giannis, Steph Curry, or John Morant, your Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Anthony Edwards, guys like that. If you really want to play them, you can go ahead and play them. Hopefully you get some other value that opens up throughout the day, but just going to have to be a little bit more creative to get there overall. But with that being said, that's quite what I have for DraftKings core picks for today. I'm going to close out of here, and then we'll go over to FanDuel and talk about my core picks over there as well. So pulling that up real quick. So on the FanDuel side, it's a lot tighter pricing today. I'm not going to lie on the FanDuel side. So it's not the greatest, at least in terms of value at this point in time. But what we have so far at the point guard position, D'Angelo Russell, once again, he's $7,000 on the FanDuel side. Currently, I'm projected for 35 points. He's averaging just over 32 so far in the season. Obviously, he gets that extra boost on DraftKings where he's hitting some 3-pointers, which he's done pretty well as of late. But if this game remains competitive, if he's out there playing 34, 35 minutes, he's going to look pretty good overall. Then at shooting guard, once again, Then at shooting guard, once again, we have Buddy Hield at $6,800. Looking for 34 points out. I currently am projected for 33 tonight. He's the guy that gets an extra boost on DraftKings as well if he's out there and he's chucking up shots and making 3-pointers once again, which, Milwaukee Bucks have been known to give up from time to time, especially against the Charlotte Hornets for whatever reason. Kind of getting a little bit off topic there, but if Buddy Hield's able to do that tonight, could look pretty good overall. Obviously, if Nembhard misses, if some other guys miss, probably going to look a little bit better overall as well, as long as that game still remains competitive. And then we move down to small forward, and this is my least favorite position on FanDuel today. And I ended up ultimately on Kenrich Williams. He's $5,000. He's not a super expensive guy. He's not a super cheap guy by any means either, because there isn't a ton of value overall on the FanDuel side at this point in time. But we're talking about a guy that could potentially start once again for the Oklahoma City Thunder. He's been very effective in his minutes so far this season. He's only averaging, almost 19 fantasy points a game. Obviously, we're looking for 25 at $5,000. If he plays 28 minutes, he's going to look pretty good. Currently, I'm projected for 24 points tonight, but he definitely does have some upside for more as well. He's kind of one of those role players that he can score a little bit. He can get some rebounds, some steals, occasional block here and there, some assists. He's a guy that does a little bit of everything, and that just kind of helps you out when you're looking for, kind of that mid-range, cheaper piece overall. He's definitely a guy that could change throughout the day if we do get some more value opening up, or some other guys that start to look better at that small forward position as well today. Then at power forward, I'm going all the way up to Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is $11,500. Pace up spot tonight against the Indianapolis Pacers. And I think I just said that funny. Indiana Pacers. So a pace up spot against the Pacers tonight overall. Obviously, Giannis has been back, I believe, 2 games now at this point in time. Looking for 57, 58 points out. I currently am projected for about 57. So pretty much what we're looking for him in line. Obviously, we know the type of upside he does have. If Miles Turner does not play in this game, I don't think the Pacers really have anybody that can get in his way in terms of stopping him from scoring. And he might get a couple extra minutes at that center position as well tonight behind Brook Lopez without Bobby Portis out there tonight, excuse me. So there is more ranges of opportunities for him to pay off overall. So definitely like Giannis tonight, and obviously he could be the highest scorer on the entire slate once again. Then at the center position, when I was first going through this, I really like Pascal Siakam just because he was one of the guys that projected out at 5X. You could still play him at power forward if you really want to. But when we put him in, we don't have a lot of money left over. And with Wendell Carter Jr. here, we don't have a lot of money left over either. So Wendell Carter Jr. is a little bit cheaper at $6,900. Looking for 34, 35 points out. Currently, I'm projected for about 33 tonight. So a little bit under that 5X, but there is some upside there. If he plays the minutes, once again, if he continues the trend that he's kind of been on as of late, it's going to look like a decent play overall, but center's a little bit harder spot overall today. If you want to go down like a Brook Lopez, you can do that as well. If you want to take your shot on one of the Memphis guys, then Xavier Tillman or Brandon Clark, you can definitely do that as well, as those guys could project out as good plays. It just kind of depends on who ends up starting, who ends up playing the most minutes. So you're going to have to take a little bit of a shot either way with one of them. But with that being said, if you go with the 5 players that I do have here on the FanDuel side for tonight's slate, you have $22,800 remaining, $5,700 per player. So not a lot of money left over. Going to have to get super creative on how you spend that. Hopefully you get some other value options that do open up throughout the day. Otherwise, we might knock Giannis down to like a Pascal Siakam, save about $2,000 there, and then kind of go from there in terms of the rest of the players for this slate overall. But at this point in time, this is kind of what I'm looking at. Hopefully you guys can kind of play around with it as well. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the chat or down in the comments if you are watching this video on replay. But with that being said, that's kind of the core 5 picks that I do have for both FanDuel and DraftKings for today at this point in time. Obviously, as I mentioned before, I'll have my updated core out about 20 to 30 minutes prior to lock, as well as many injury updates and starting lineups throughout the day as we do get. And then with that being said, that's pretty much it for the core pick portion of the video. Going to go over to Price Picks and just kind of look a little bit at Price Picks, see if there's anything else that really stands out. When I first looked at like the fantasy scores, because that's the main thing I focus on since I do the projections every day for FanDuel and DraftKings, and obviously Price Picks is more closely related to the FanDuel scoring. So that's kind of where I had the best grasp right away. But I can also mention some other plays that I did see that kind of stuck out, at least early on. And at this point in time, a lot of these lines are super tight. Maybe some news that we get throughout the day helps open up some other picks as well. So we're going to get closed out of FanDuel here, and then we'll bring up Price Picks and then kind of go from there. So we're going to share the Price Picks screen real quick. And then for anybody that is brand new to Price Picks, hasn't joined before, I'm going to leave my code here in the chat. If you sign up, when you sign up, you throw this code in there, you get a little extra bonus, helps you out a little bit, helps me out a little bit as well. But in terms of the Price Picks, what we're looking at this point in time, we're going to go over the fantasy scores first of all, and then we'll kind of mention a couple other things that do stand out to me at this point in time. So just going through a lot of these fancy scores. A lot of these lines are super tight at this point in time. Giannis I had projected for 57. He's at 56.5. Drew Holiday I have projected for 39.40. He's at 39.5. So these are ones that we're not really looking at playing. Brook Lopez I have at 28, which is a little bit lower, but he definitely has that upside without Bobby Portis there. Grayson Allen, I think they just added him. So he's at 19.5. I have him about 21. So there is a little bit of leverage there, but not too much. John Morant is at 49.5. Currently have him at 49. there is a chance that he could get up over 50 as well with the matchup. But at the same time, there's some blowout risk there and everything else. Anthony Edwards have about 45, 46, and he's at 44.5. Jaren Jackson Jr. is 35.5. So this FanDuel scoring, I had him about 35, 36 on DraftKings. FanDuel will be about 36, 37-ish. So a little bit of leverage, but not too much. D'Angelo Russell, we already know we got it for 35. So he's right in line there too. The first one that really stands out is Jaden McDaniels at 22.5 fantasy points. He's hit the under the past 3 games. He is a very volatile player, though. So he's either going to go like way under or way over. So this is one you could bet the under on if you really want to, but not going out of my way to do it personally myself. Kyle Anderson, 28.5. I got him at 28, 29 tonight. So he's pretty much in line as well. Jimmy Butler, not been the greatest as of late. Supposedly he's got that back injury that he's been dealing with, though. So not anything that I really want to bet one way or the other, because he could easily go over, but he could easily go under with the injury that he's kind of going through. Paolo Banchero, 33.5. I got him at 34, 35 tonight. Bam Adebayo's at 41.5. I have him at 41. So you're seeing a lot of tight lines on the price pick side at this point in time. Franz Wagner at 28.5. I have him for 29.30 tonight. So pretty much the same. Tyler Hero, 33.5. I have through 34. Markelle Fultz at 26.5 is one maybe to consider here. I have him at 28. Looking at his last 5, let's see. He's hit 3 out of the past 5 games, but you kind of get in those random games where he gets in foul trouble and loses a couple minutes like that as well, or he just kind of doesn't shoot the greatest either. So if you want to go after Markelle Fultz at 26.5, you can take the over there if you really want to. That is one to consider for sure. Kyle Lowry, his minutes, like I can't even say like his minutes have been all over the place, but his production has kind of been all over the place. Wendell Carter Jr. is one that I would consider here at 28.5. I currently have him for, 32, 33, and he's hit the over the past 3 games. But at the same time, when we're talking Wendell Carter Jr., his rebounds prop is at 8.5, and I like the rebounds prop just a little bit better. But if you want to do the fantasy one, you could definitely do that as well. Or if you want to do the rebounds one, you can definitely do that. But with price picks, one of the downfalls is you can't just pick him for both props, or can't use both props on him. As we're looking through some of these, or as I was looking through some of these to start the day, we got Gary Harris here at 13.5, which is just like a super low number in general. And it's almost comically funny how low that number is, but he's been starting. He's not a good fantasy point per minute producer, but he's hit the last 4 straight games. So if you want to consider Gary Harris, you can do it. It's not something I'm going to personally do myself, but at least a talking point there, especially when you got a guy that has a fantasy line that's that low to start with. Not really messing with Caleb Martin. He's kind of got that injury. He's kind of been all over the place in terms of production. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, I have at 49. He's at 48.5. Josh Giddey got 36. Jalen Williams, I got 26, 27 on. Fred VanVleet's around 40. There is upside with Fred VanVleet tonight against Golden State. I feel like if you were going to bet his fantasy score, I probably just bet his 19.5 points over, though, because he's hit it 4 of the past 5 games. Last game was the only game that he did not. Steph Curry at 42.5 is actually one to consider. I have him about 46, 47-ish. So that's one to consider for the over as well. So that's actually a pretty decent one, especially if this game remains competitive. His last 5 games, let's take a look at it. So he's hit the over 3 of the past 5 games. Didn't do it against Brooklyn, didn't do it against Chicago. But definitely looking more like himself as of late. So that is one that I would consider. Then let's see, Pascal Siakam at 44.5. I don't think this one was up earlier when I was looking. I currently have Pascal Siakam projected for about 47, 48. So this is one you could consider as well. He's done it in his last 3 games. 2 games before that, he didn't miss. Klay Thompson's really been up and down since they went to this Jordan Poole lineup. So 30.5 is not the worst line in the world, but just a little bit tighter than it typically would be otherwise. Gary Trent I have for 29.30, so that's right in line. Jordan Poole, I think he's hit the over the past 5 games at 32.5. I have him at, I believe, 35 tonight. So that is definitely one that you could consider if you want to do so. So the ones that we kind of have so far, let me see what Scotty Barnes is at too. 35.5. I didn't look at Scotty Barnes earlier. So we see he's only hit 3 out of the past 5 there, but going against Golden State, we got to pace up matchup here. If this game's competitive, I don't mind Scotty Barnes. He's one that I like taking a lot though, personally. Draymond's pretty much in line. OG's been dealing with that injury, so I'm not super excited about chasing him either, because I believe it was an ankle. You risk a little bit of him re-rolling that at any point in time as well. But at this point in time, Jordan Poole was kind of one to consider for the over. Steph Curry was one to consider for the over. You could consider Pascal Siakam for the over. Fred VanVleet, you could consider for the over, but I would prefer his points in general at 19.5 for the over. Gary Harris, if you really want to get there at 13.5, you could consider the over. He's done it like the last 4 times, like I said, but not something I'm personally chasing myself. And then let's see, Wendell Carter Jr. for the over in fantasy points you can do as well, but I like the rebounds prop on him just a little bit better. Markelle Fultz you could consider as well. We're running out a little bit of space here since I guess, let's see what we got 4 so far. We can do up to 6 on any card. Typically, I like to do 3-player slates just because you only got to get 2 out of 3 right on the flex play to pay off overall. But that's just kind of my strategy. You can consider Jaden McDaniels, for the under. Jalen is his brother that plays for the Charlotte Hornets. So that's kind of where I'd be looking at this point in time. So let's recap this real quick. We'll put McDaniels there too while we got it. So these are the ones in terms of fantasy scores I'd be looking at. Jordan Poole over, Steph Curry over, Pascal Siakam over, Wendell Carter over, Markelle Fultz over, and Jalen McDaniels under. Those would be the 6 that I would consider for fantasy scores. Doesn't mean you have to play all 6. Pick the ones that you like. If you want to play 3 guys, if you want to play a 3-leg parlay for this, you can do it. If you want to do 2, if you want to do 4, if you want to do 5, if you want to do 6, you can do that as well. But we're going to move over and talk about some of the other props that I do have. So I'm going to clear these ones out for this point in time and just get these fancy score ones out of here. Going to go through real quick in terms of the assist, rebounds, and everything else like that. I think 3-pointers made. I'm trying to remember if I liked anybody here. This is typically where I go after the fantasy points. So let's see. Was there anybody in terms of 3-pointers made? I looked at some of the stuff real quickly this morning. I don't have a ton of notes for 3-pointers made. I did not have anybody there. Sometimes I'll peek at turnovers. The only guy that really stood out for me turnovers wise, I believe, was it Anthony Edwards? It might be Anthony Edwards. 3.5 here. So obviously with the Timberwolves, he's been taking more shots. He's been having the ball in his hand more often than not. And he's hit the over 4 times here. So if you want to look at turnovers for Anthony Edwards, they're going against Memphis, who is a decent defensive team, or at least a team that likes to try to steal the ball. When you got players like Dylan Brooks, Zaire Williams, and stuff like that, guys that want to try to poke the ball out, they're guys that are probably going to be defending him more times than that too. So he could get some turnovers that way. And then, he just makes a bad pass, turns the ball over, anything else like that too. So that is one to consider tonight overall. In terms of assist, I don't think there was too much that stood out in terms of assist as compared to like last night. Kyle Anderson at 4.5 is not the worst in the world, but still missed 2 out of the past 5 games. The one game he obviously got in really bad foul trouble and barely did anything. Almost got thrown out of the game too. So that's a whole story for a different day. Markelle Fultz at 5, seeing if there's anything here. So he's done it essentially 4 out of the past 5 games. That is one to consider as well, but I think I'd probably go with his fantasy points more so. Let's see if there's anybody else. Draymond's at 6.5. He's hit the past 5 games, but I just don't trust Draymond personally. That's just a thing that really stands out to me overall. Jordan Poole at 4.5. Since he's been in that starting lineup, he has got it once. So that would be one to consider maybe for the under, but it's a little bit tighter than I would like to bet. And then all of a sudden, Pascal Siakam has been getting a lot of assists lately. So he's been at 6 or more the past 4 games, but not something I'm chasing tonight either. So in terms of assists, really the only guy that I would be going after, not really anybody, honestly, because Kyle Anderson, you could chase if you want to. Markelle Fultz, you could chase it a little bit if you wanted to. Yeah, not too much in terms of assists today as compared to yesterday, where we had 3 that I kind of liked in terms of assists with Julius Randle, Chris Paul, and Elfrid Sengun. And Chris Paul and Elfrid Sengun both hit, and Julius Randle was the under, I believe. Pretty much everything I talked about otherwise yesterday hit besides the Julius Randle assist. So in terms of rebounds, the ones that I was really looking at so far, let me get there. I'm going to look at Kyle Anderson too, just real quick, because this is where it was at, where he kind of had this streak where he's getting these rebounds. And I bet it was either 5.5 or 6, the over. And that was the game where he got in really big foul trouble. So that did not end up too well on that day. See. So Wendell Carter Jr. 8.5 rebounds was kind of the one I talked about where I like that a little bit more than his fantasy score overall. So you can definitely consider him at 8.5 rebounds, pulling up his last 5 games if we want to. He's got 10, 11, 9, 9. Obviously, he missed here the 6 against Denver, but pretty good rebounder. And he's been playing more minutes as of late. The Bam matchup kind of impacts it a little bit, but I'm not too afraid of it overall. Let's see who else here. I'm going to take a look at Siakam real quick. So he's kind of been hit or miss. Let's see. I think Draymond's gone over in terms of rebounds since he's kind of been in that starting lineup without Looney. So he got 13, 11, 13. I believe he started at center all 3 of those games as well. So that is something to consider if you want to go there. But Toronto is a team that kind of likes to play big from a good amount of the time too. So maybe it's a game where we see a little bit more Kevon Looney as well. That's kind of where we're at for rebounds. Wendell Carter was really the main one. And then just looking at points real quick. I know I mentioned Drew Holiday at 9. Did I mention Drew? I don't think I mentioned Drew Holiday at 19.5 at this point in time. So I do apologize for that. Drew Holiday at 19.5 was one that I did kind of like. He's done it 4 out of the past 5 games. He just didn't do one game versus Detroit, which I believe was a pretty good blowout as well. Pays up spot against the Pacers tonight. Do like that quite a bit. Obviously, Chris Middleton is still limited at this point in time. I'm trying to remember if there was anybody else we like in terms of points. I want to look at McDaniels too. So he's pretty much the games that he's hit in terms of fantasy score, but also the games that he scored points. I'd still prefer the fantasy score under to the points under just because it's a little bit bigger difference overall. See if there's anybody else that really stood out to me. If anybody does have any questions about like a specific prop or anything else like that, feel free to leave in the chat, or if you're watching on replay, leave it down in the comments and I can kind of give you my thoughts about it as well. I want to look at Shea Gilgeous-Alexander at 29.5. It sounds like a pretty big number, but he's been over 30 the past 3 games. Going against Cleveland tonight, there is potential blowout risk, but Oklahoma City's actually stayed pretty close in a lot of these games, more than people would probably expect. Fred VanVleet at 19.5, when we were talking about his fantasy points, this is another one that could kind of stand out. And then let's see if there's any other ones that really stood out. So that pretty much is it. So in terms of points, I'm just going to throw all the points and the rebounds and the turnovers all in one too, just so you guys have that visual. In addition to the 6 fantasy scores that I did mention before. So if you are looking at not playing fantasy scores, or if you want to mix some of the fantasy scores and some of the regular props together as well, we could look at Fred VanVleet at 19.5 points for the over, Drew Holiday at 19.5 points for the over, Anthony Edwards over 3.5 turnovers, and Wendell Carter Jr. over 8.5 rebounds. So that's pretty much where I'm at. Those are 10 picks that you could mix and match. If there's anything else that does pop up throughout the day that looks pretty good on Prize Picks, I can throw that down in the comments as well. And hopefully you guys gained a little bit of knowledge from this, or some props to consider. If you guys have any questions, once again, feel free to leave it in the chat or or in the comments if you are watching on replay. But with that being said, that's pretty much what I have at this point in time. Once again, just want to thank everybody that did tune in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely appreciate you checking out this video, this live stream. It definitely does mean a lot to me. If you're new to my channel and you haven't already subscribed, please consider doing so. Do a lot of NBA DFS here, doing a little bit of Prize Picks throughout the week as I can as well. And then as we get closer to the NFL draft, I'll be sharing some of my NFL draft scouting as well, and just kind of a bunch of different stuff when it comes to the NFL draft. So if that's something you're interested in as well, definitely be sure to check that out. And then with that being said, if you're a new or current subscriber who's yet to do so, also be sure to hit that notification bell down below. It's going to let you know every time that I do post a video, whether it's pre-recorded or going live for a live stream. Definitely a valuable resource, especially if you do enjoy the content that I am putting out overall. But once again, that's pretty much all I got for today. Do appreciate everybody that did tune in. Hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day. And if you do have any questions that do pop up throughout the day, whether it's right now or as you're watching later, or if you're coming back to it, or as we get closer to lock, feel free to leave those in the comments as well, and I'll get back to you as quickly as possible. But like I said, that's pretty much all I got, and I hope each and every one of you has a great rest of your day.